for both actions was involved in the illicit trafficking of advanced conventional weapons systems and components by the sanctioned Iranian entities that directly support military action by the Houthi movement.
Special Envoy Grandberg met Chinese Special Envoy of the Middle East today to discuss ways to enhance concerted international support for the United-led mediation in Yemen. The meeting also aimed to sustain unity in the Security Council in support of a durable political solution to the conflict in the country. The British ambassador to Yemen, Richard Oppenheim, confirmed that the increasing restrictions imposed by the Houthi militia on relief operations. Oppenheim said that it has become difficult for the United Nations and humanitarian organizations to reach 21 million Yemenis. He pointed out that the Houthi interventions limit the ability of humanitarian programs to provide aid efficiently. Local human rights activists discussed in Geneva the Houthi violations committed against Yemenis. The discussion focused on the violation against different social factions, especially women and children. This report has more.
Yemeni human rights activists exposed in Geneva the abuses committed by the Houthi militias against all facets of society, including children, and charged the group with enlisting 238 young people, despite recent UN resolutions prohibiting such actions. According to Yemeni official media, a team for the UN Office for the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the Human Association for Rights and Freedoms discussed the conditions of children in Yemen in light of violations committed by the Houthis and their failure to commit to agreements signed with UNICEF on protecting children during armed conflict. The Yemeni team stated during a meeting organized on the 53rd session of the Human Rights Council at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva that civil society organizations had watched and documented the instance of 238 freshly recruited minors. The Yemeni human rights team highlighted the Houthi militia's abuses, including the placing of mines disguised as unrecognizable devices, noting that the majority of victims were young children. The team also briefed the official in charge of the Yemeni file at the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights on the violations committed by Houthis, such as the arrests of human rights activists and civilians, as well as the torture they face in Houthi prisons, which have left some of them permanently disabled. Millions of children in Yemen have experienced a live alerting battle for almost 10 years, and children remain the victims of this war. More than 11,000 children were killed, and hundreds of thousands of people have died, directly from fighting as well as indirectly, and millions have been displaced, according to the UN reports. The recruitment of children as soldiers in Yemen could be one of the worst situations in the country. Since the start of the Yemeni conflict in 2014, child recruiting has become particularly common among conflict groups. The majority of Yemen's children soldiers come from impoverished communities and families. Children being recruited for military service in Yemen is a serious issue for both peace and fundamental human rights.
One woman was killed and a child injured in a mine explosion laid by the Houthi militia in Hodeidah. Local monitors said that a 45-year-old woman was killed and an 11-year-old girl was injured by shrapnel in separate parts of her body. According to the United Nations and human rights reports, Hodeidah is one of the areas most affected by Houthi mines. Amnesty International called on the parties to the conflict in Yemen to immediately release all detainees. The organization said in a statement that parties to the conflict must immediately and unconditionally release all those arbitrarily detained, including journalists, political activists, and human rights defenders. The statement welcomed also the release of the two journalists, Mohammed al-Salahi and Mohammed al-Junaid, by the Houthis after spending 4 years in detention. The Houthi militia carried out an arrest campaign against a number of civilians from Otma district west of Damar. Local sources said that the Houthi militia carried out a military campaign to a number of villagers in Otma district in search of a group of free activists. According to the sources, the militia arrested 12 civilians from the isolated areas of Bani Bahr and transferred them to prisons in the city of Damar. Yemen's status as the least peaceful country in the Arab world was recorded for the third consecutive year, according to the Global Peace Index. The following report has more details.
According to the Global Peace Index 2023, 5 of the world's 10 least peaceful countries are in the Arab world, despite the fact that the Middle East and North Africa saw some of the highest advances in security and peace. Yemen, Syria, Somalia, Sudan, and Iraq were placed 162, 161, 156, 155, and 154 respectively out of 163 nations. Yemen's status as the least peaceful country in the Arab world was recorded for the third consecutive year owing to its civil war. Yemen's war began in 2014 when Houthi insurgents took control of Sana'a, Yemen's capital and largest city, demanding cheaper gasoline prices and a new administration. The Syrian civil war is a multi-sided civil war between the Syrian Arab Republic, commanded by President Bashar al-Assad, and other domestic and international parties who oppose both the government and each other. On April 15, 2023, conflicts between clashing groups of Sudan's military administration erupted in cities, with the violence centered around the capital city of Khartoum. Qatar has retained its title as the most peaceful country in the region, which it has held since 2008. Meanwhile, Libya had the greatest improvement in peacefulness internationally for the second year in a row. The rankings are based on an examination of data from 99.7% of the world's population on peace, conflict, and economic security parameters. According to the 2023 GPI, the world has become less peaceful for the 13th time in the previous 15 years, with the Ukraine crisis pushing up levels of insecurity and conflict-related mortality increasing by 96%. A significant drop in the number of conflicts in the MENA area resulted in significant improvements in the ongoing conflict and militarization measures. The region also witnessed improvements in terrorism impact, internal conflicts fought, and deaths from internal conflict.
Coming up in the news. Displaced Yemenis in Ma'rib struggle to survive amid hot summer. Welcome back. The International Organization for Migration announced that the number of displaced people in Yemen decreased by half during the first 6 months of 2023. The organization said that from January 1st to July 1st, 2023, the displacement of 3,482 families in Yemen was monitored. It added that these displaced families number 20,892 people, and they have been displaced at least once. Displaced families in Ma'rib province continue to struggle to survive amid the hot summer and in the absence of electricity. The following report has more.
The residents of the camps in Ma'rib Governorate complain about the rise in the extreme temperature, which exceeded about 40 degrees. This has greatly affected the lives of people, especially the displaced. People live in the outskirts of the city in the desert, where the electricity is very weak and is cut off for days.
The high temperature is making us suffer, especially children and old people. International organizations do not help us or provide us with anything. We call on authorities to help us and find a solution.
There is severe heat, which the city's residents cannot bear, while the displacement camps are also suffering from this problem. For its residents, the weather is extremely hot, and the tents are dilapidated and no longer fit to live. Selma tries to relieve the severe heat on her little girl. The kid does not stop crying inside the camp in the desert of Ma'rib.
The temperature is extremely high and we don't have air conditioner. There is constant electricity cuts. At night my children keep crying and they cannot sleep. We are suffering.
According to the meteorology, the temperature in the cities of Ma'rib and El Jouf are about 41 degrees. Hot weather and deadly temperature happen as a result of global warming and climate change in the world. The authorities must find a solution to help these poor people, as they have no electricity or any means to help them in this hot weather.
ثياب نشطط يعني ثياب نروح عن القرى نحوس وهذا نروح بثياب ونصلحها معاولنا وكراتين من الشوارع. والله ان احنا نكره المطر. يخسع لنا البطانيات، يخسع الفراش، يخسع الجماش، نسمر برادة، خاسعين احنا وجهالنا.
فالمأوى الانتقالي هذا الكنتيرة جعلتهم يعيشوا في استقرار للمستفيدين من ناحية سواء من ناحية الأمطار أو لا من ناحية العواصف والرياح والرملية، بما أنه عندنا هنا في مأرب الرياح بتكون شديدة.
A United Nations official stated that she received a request from Yemen to examine the wreckage of a missile fired by the Houthi militia at an oil port. The United Nations Under-Secretary General for Political Affairs, she received a request from the Yemeni government to examine the debris of a cruise missile used in the Houthi attack on the Adala oil station. This came in a briefing provided by the United Nations officials Security Council on Iran's nuclear program. The oil minister in the unrecognized of Houthis said that some Houthi influential leaders tamper with the revenues of oil. He added that those officials undermine the work in the ministry and that some of them are involved in the corruption. This report has more details.
While consecutive fuel crises have compounded Yemeni suffering, a recent finding has shown a worrying facet of corruption inside the fuel and cooking gas companies controlled by Houthi rebels. The Houthi-appointed oil and minerals minister has experienced dissatisfaction with his inability to adequately control transaction acquisition, distribution, and monitoring. This development suggests that there is a current power struggle within the Houthi leadership. Ahmad Abdullah Daris, the Minister of Oil and Minerals in the unrecognized Houthi administration, stated that he has been sidelined and prevented from carrying out his obligations in the industry he controls. He claims that he and his staff were refused the power to acquire gasoline and exert control over the procurement and marketing operations. Daris stated during a debate before the so-called House of Representatives in Sana'a, which is controlled by the Houthis, that the inability to acquire gas has been assigned to corporations and merchants who negotiate procurement arrangements with providing companies. He and his administration are primarily concerned with monitoring the arrival of oil supplies, setting and regulating pricing, as well as managing distribution and controlling the selling process in local markets. However, released records show that the commercial section of the Houthi-controlled Yemeni oil company has resorted to selling a ton of oil for $500, rejecting proposals from other firms for $250. This was accomplished through a money exchange firm operated by 5 key Houthi oil dealers. The international team of experts affiliated with the UN Security Council has previously accused Houthi militias of creating an artificial fuel scarcity to compel traders to sell it in the black market, which they control.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. United States takes legal actions against Iranian weapons smuggling into Yemen to the Houthis. Local rights groups discuss human rights violations committed by Houthis against Yemenis in Geneva. Global Peace Index recorded Yemen as 5th least peaceful country in the Arab world. This is the end of the news. It was Abir Ali, and thank you for watching.